Imagine reaching the final exit of an underwater cave and discovering that the water is moving faster than any human can swim. The passage narrows, the current accelerates, your mask begins tearing away from your face, your breathing equipment shifts, your body is driven toward rocks with enough force to pin you in place. There is no switch that stops the water, no reserve of strength that reverses the flow, and the exit you plan to use has become the most dangerous part of the cave. This is the terrifying physics of a freshwater siphon, and the fatal dive that proved a cave does not need to collapse to trap you. Sometimes, the water itself becomes the wall. Before we begin, one clarification matters. This was not a case of 3 divers being held against a metal grate. The documented 2019 Manatee Springs incident involved 4 cave divers attempting to exit through a constricted freshwater spring opening in northern Florida. 3 were eventually forced out by the flow. 1 diver remained trapped among the rocks and died. The danger did not come from machinery. It came from a natural passage whose shape turned moving water into an overwhelming hydraulic force. To understand what happened, we first need to understand the word siphon. In cave diving language, a spring and a siphon describe the direction in which water moves. A spring pushes groundwater outward from the cave toward the surface. A siphon pulls surface water inward through an underwater passage. But the Manatee Springs tragedy demonstrates that the labels can become confusing when divers travel through a connected system. The team entered through Catfish Hotel, a nearby sinkhole, and planned to travel through the cave before exiting at the Manatee Springs headspring. Inside most of the route, they could move with manageable flow. Near the final opening, however, the water accelerated toward the spring exit. The closer they came to freedom, the more dangerous the hydraulic conditions became. The planned exit was not simply a hole leading into open water. It had been altered by rock collapses. A passage that had once been used for traverses had become smaller and more restricted. Local cave divers reportedly considered the route increasingly hazardous. Heavy rain before the incident had also increased the flow beyond its usual strength. That created the first major lesson of this accident. An exit remembered from previous dives may no longer be the same exit. Caves change, rock falls, sediment shifts, restrictions become tighter, floodwater alters visibility and flow. A route that was manageable years earlier can become dangerous without looking dramatically different on a map. The group's leader was an experienced cave instructor who had reportedly completed the traverse in the past. But he had not used that route recently and was unaware of how much the headspring opening had changed. The plan depended on information that was no longer current. 4 divers entered at Catfish Hotel. 2 used rebreathers and underwater scooters. The other pair used back-mounted double cylinders. The teams were supposed to meet inside the cave and travel together toward the downstream exit. This was not a group of untrained swimmers wandering into darkness. They had cave diving equipment. They had propulsion vehicles. They had breathing gas reserves. And at least some members had substantial experience. Yet none of that equipment could change the direction of the water. As they approached the final section, the flow initially appeared manageable. That may have created false confidence. A diver can swim through hundreds of meters of cave and believe that the most difficult part is already behind them. The exit light may be visible ahead. Open water appears close. The psychological response is powerful. The dive feels almost finished, but water does not accelerate evenly through every part of a cave. When a large volume of water is forced through a smaller opening, its speed increases. Imagine placing your thumb over the end of a garden hose. The same water must pass through a reduced area. The stream becomes faster. A cave restriction can produce a similar effect on a much larger and more dangerous scale. The broad passage acts as a reservoir. The narrowed exit acts as a nozzle. As the divers moved up the final slope toward the opening, the current strengthened suddenly. The lead diver reportedly attempted to hold onto rocks. He could not maintain his position. The water pulled at his mask. It interfered with his rebreather mouthpiece and breathing loop. Then it expelled him from the cave. This is where the phrase underwater vacuum can be misleading. There was no vacuum sucking the divers out. The force came from rapidly moving water acting against the surface area of their bodies and equipment. A diver presents a large shape to the flow. A back-mounted cylinder or rebreather creates drag. A scooter, light cable, hose, and buoyancy wing add more surfaces for the water to catch. When the velocity increases, the force against those surfaces rises dramatically. It does not increase in a simple one-to-one relationship. Double the water speed, and the drag force can become approximately 4 times greater. That means a current that feels manageable moments earlier can become overpowering after only a modest increase in speed. The diver may still possess the same strength, but the force opposing that strength has multiplied. Swimming harder does not necessarily solve the problem. Hard swimming increases breathing, increases carbon dioxide production, consumes gas faster, raises stress, and reduces the time available to make decisions. When a current becomes stronger than a diver's ability to swim, the diver must use the cave itself. Grab rocks, pull along the floor, reduce the body's profile. Seek shelter behind formations, but near a narrow exit, those options may disappear. The rock may be smooth. The current may tear the diver's hand free. Equipment may catch. Visibility may deteriorate. And if one diver stops suddenly, everyone behind that person can be driven into the same restriction. The first diver was forced through the opening and out into the spring. He then attempted to return. This is another terrifying feature of strong flow. The current can eject a diver from the cave but make re-entry almost impossible. The diver outside may be only meters from companions who need help. He may see their lights. He may see movement. He may know exactly where they are. But the water between them acts like a conveyor belt moving in the wrong direction. Every attempt to swim inward is defeated. Another member of the group was then forced out. Inside the restriction, a third diver had become unconscious. His equipment was reportedly wedged among the rocks. A scooter and lighting equipment complicated the obstruction. The lead diver managed to free some of the trapped equipment, allowing the unconscious diver to be carried out by the current. The 2 divers outside were eventually able to revive him, but the 4th diver remained inside. She was deeper in the constriction and was no longer breathing from her regulator. The rescuers could not reach her against the flow. That distinction is essential. The current did not simply make swimming difficult. It physically prevented trained divers from moving a short distance toward another human being. They could see that someone needed help. They had breathing equipment. They had lights. They had experience. But none of those things created enough force to overcome the water. The victim remained pinned within the rocky exit. A specialist cave recovery team was later called. The recovery itself took approximately 3 hours. Divers removed equipment, cut hoses, and moved rocks while trying to reduce the force holding the victim in place. Even after the double cylinders were removed, the body reportedly remained firmly wedged. The team eventually succeeded in extracting her manually. Think about what that means. Several trained recovery divers working from the safer side of the opening struggled for hours to remove one person. During the original emergency, the dive team had only moments. They were being thrown through the restriction. Their equipment was catching. One diver was unconscious. Another was unreachable. And every second of exertion increased their own physiological risk. This is where the survival problem becomes more than hydraulics. It becomes a breathing problem. A diver under heavy workload produces more carbon dioxide. Normally, the diver responds by breathing faster and deeper, but underwater, breathing already requires effort. The regulator must deliver gas at surrounding pressure. Hoses and mouthpieces create resistance. A rebreather adds its own breathing characteristics. When current tears at the equipment or forces the diver into an awkward position, breathing can become even harder. If carbon dioxide begins accumulating, the diver may feel air hunger. The natural reaction is to breathe faster, but rapid, shallow breathing may fail to remove carbon dioxide effectively. The diver feels as if the equipment is not supplying enough gas even when gas remains available. Anxiety rises, decision-making deteriorates, muscles weaken. The diver works harder, more carbon dioxide is produced. This creates a vicious cycle. The current causes exertion. Exertion causes carbon dioxide buildup. Carbon dioxide creates panic and a sensation of suffocation. Panic causes greater exertion. Gas consumption accelerates, and physical control begins to disappear. For a diver using open-circuit scuba, every heavy breath removes more gas from the cylinders. For a rebreather diver, carbon dioxide control depends on the system functioning correctly and on the diver not overwhelming the breathing loop or scrubber through extreme exertion. Neither system makes the diver immune to workload. The water does not need to empty the cylinder directly, it only needs to force the diver to consume gas faster than planned. The current can also destabilize the breathing apparatus. A regulator can be pulled from the mouth. A rebreather mouthpiece can shift. A mask can flood. A hose can snag. If the diver loses the mouthpiece while being pushed through rocks, recovering it may be extremely difficult. The hands may already be occupied trying to hold position. The diver may be upside down. The current may rotate the body. Visibility may be filled with bubbles and disturbed sediment. A problem that is easy to solve in calm water becomes much harder when the diver is moving uncontrollably. This is why cave diving incidents often involve chains rather than single failures. The team did not enter the water expecting to become trapped. They expected a traverse, but several factors aligned. The exit had changed. The strong flow had not been verified from the surface. Recent rain increased water movement. The route placed the divers downstream of their original entrance. The final restriction accelerated the flow. Equipment became caught among rocks. A diver lost consciousness, and the rescuers could not move against the hydraulic force. Remove one element, and the outcome might have changed. Inspect the exit before the dive, and the team may have abandoned the traverse. Choose a different route, and the constriction may never have been approached. Avoid the period of high flow, and the water might have remained manageable. Turn around earlier, and the team could have returned to Catfish Hotel. But accident chains are rarely obvious at the beginning. Each decision can appear reasonable when viewed alone. The leader had completed the route previously. The divers were equipped for cave exploration. The flow initially seemed light. The exit was visible ahead. They may have believed they could inspect the final passage and retreat if necessary. That final belief proved especially dangerous. A team approaching a high-flow exit from inside may assume that it can turn around if the opening looks bad. But the zone where the danger becomes obvious may already be the zone where turning becomes impossible. The divers moved onto a rising slope. The flow accelerated. Once the current caught them, it removed their ability to stop, communicate, and reverse direction. The inspection itself became the commitment. That is the hydraulic point of no return. Not a painted line on the cave floor. Not an alarm. Not a precise depth. It is the place where the water gains enough control over the diver that human decisions no longer determine movement. Before that point, the diver chooses whether to continue. After that point, the current chooses. This also explains why scooters did not guarantee escape. A dive propulsion vehicle can move a diver efficiently through a cave. It can conserve gas and reduce swimming effort. But a scooter has limited thrust. It is not designed to overpower every possible current. It also adds bulk and entanglement potential. In the Manatee Springs incident, equipment associated with one diver reportedly became wedged in the rocks. A machine meant to increase mobility became part of the obstruction. That does not mean scooters are inherently unsafe. It means every piece of equipment creates both capability and complexity. A light cable can illuminate a cave but catch on rock. A scooter can increase range but become trapped. Double cylinders provide redundancy but increase surface area and drag. A rebreather extends gas duration but can be harder to breathe from during extreme workload. Technical equipment does not remove risk. It changes the type of risk. The most important preventive failure identified in the incident account was that the planned exit had not been inspected before the traverse. Normal traverse planning requires confirming that the exit is open, usable, and appropriate for the conditions. That might involve visiting the headspring from land, observing the flow, speaking with local divers, checking recent reports, or conducting a separate inspection dive from the exit side when conditions permit. The team did not complete that verification before committing to the route. This lesson extends far beyond one Florida cave. Conditions from an old dive log may be outdated. An online map may not reflect a collapse. A video recorded during dry weather may not represent the cave after heavy rain. A local diver saying, "People used to do that traverse," does not mean the traverse is safe today. Every exit is part of the dive plan, and every planned exit must be treated as a potential failure point. A diver should ask, can the opening still be used? What direction is the water moving? How strong is the flow today? Is there a restriction near the surface? Can every member of the team pass through with the equipment being carried? Can the team turn around before entering the high flow zone? What happens if one diver becomes unconscious? Can a rescuer approach from outside? Is there another exit? If those questions cannot be answered, the route is not fully understood. This accident also challenges the belief that reaching daylight means reaching safety. The divers could see the spring exit. They were close to open water, but the last few meters were more dangerous than the entire cave behind them. In many cave accidents, darkness represents danger and daylight represents rescue. Here, daylight marked the location where the water accelerated. The exit became a hydraulic restriction. The safest direction may actually have been back into darkness if the team had turned before the current took control. But once they reached the slope, that choice was disappearing. There is a painful psychological element to this. They have followed the planned route. Turning around would mean traveling all the way back through the cave. It would consume more time and gas. It could feel like admitting the plan failed. But caves do not care how much effort has already been invested. This is sometimes called commitment escalation. The team has already come so far that continuing feels easier than reversing. The objective begins controlling the decision. Complete the traverse. Reach the planned exit. Avoid the long return. But the safest plan is not the plan completed exactly as imagined. It is the plan that allows everyone to return alive. The aftermath of the Manatee Springs incident produced physical changes to the cave diving route. The main line leading toward the hazardous exit was removed, and a warning sign was placed to discourage divers from attempting the same path. That response acknowledges an important truth. Training and judgment matter, but environmental design also influences behavior. A permanent guideline can unintentionally signal that a route is established and acceptable. Divers may follow it because someone else installed it. Removing the line forces a deliberate decision. The warning sign interrupts the assumption that the passage leads to a normal exit, but no sign can replace personal assessment. A diver can always swim past a warning. A team can always believe its experience makes it different. The cave does not measure certifications. The current does not recognize instructor status. Hydraulic force acts on every body according to the same physics. This is not an argument that the divers lacked courage or skill. It is a demonstration that courage and skill have limits. A current strong enough to tear at a mask and breathing loop cannot be negotiated through determination alone. When water velocity exceeds human and equipment capability, survival depends on avoiding the flow zone before it takes control. Once pinned, the diver faces several simultaneous threats: physical entrapment, loss of breathing equipment, exhaustion, carbon dioxide buildup, rapid gas consumption. injury from rocks, loss of visibility, and the inability of companions to approach. The environment turns the diver's own body into part of the blockage. Water presses the diver against the restriction. The more surface area the body and equipment present, the greater the force. Pulling directly against that force may accomplish almost nothing. Recovery teams sometimes need to remove equipment, change the body's orientation, reduce buoyancy, move rocks, or create a second path. Those are actions that require time, tools, and support. A trapped diver has minutes. That is why prevention dominates every survival lesson from this event. Do not enter a high-flow restriction expecting strength to solve the problem. Do not rely on a scooter as the final answer. Do not assume previous experience guarantees present conditions. Do not treat an unverified exit as part of a safe traverse. And do not mistake visible daylight for an easy escape. The fatal moment may not have begun when the diver became pinned. It may have begun hours earlier when the exit was included in the plan without being physically inspected. That is how cave accidents often work. The final event is dramatic. A regulator is lost. A line is broken. A diver becomes trapped. But the conditions for that event were created by earlier decisions that seemed far less important. The route was remembered. The map was trusted. The current was underestimated. The exit was assumed to remain passable. The plan continued. Then the cave narrowed. The water accelerated, and the time for changing the plan was gone. 3 divers were expelled from the cave. 1 was revived after becoming unconscious. 1 remained trapped and could not be reached. The recovery team later fought the same force and needed hours to remove her. That fact alone reveals the scale of the hydraulic trap. This was not a current that could be overcome by swimming slightly harder. It was a force capable of controlling trained divers and holding a fully equipped body against stone. The cave did not close behind them. The guideline did not disappear. The water did not suddenly become poisonous. The exit remained visible. But visibility is not accessibility. A route can exist and still be impossible to use. A doorway can be open and still function like a wall. And moving water can become an invisible machine with no emergency stop. So imagine that final approach again. The darkness behind you stretches through the cave. Daylight appears ahead. The flow feels light. The route rises. You move forward. Then the water accelerates. Your hand slips from the rock. Your mask begins to move. Your breathing apparatus pulls against your face. The diver in front disappears through the opening. The diver behind collides with the restriction. In that instant, the dive is no longer controlled by training, planning, or intention. It is controlled by pressure, velocity, and the shape of the cave. That is the terror of the freshwater siphon. The water does not need to chase you. It does not need to surprise you. It only needs to move through a space too small for its volume. And when you enter that space, the current may decide where your body goes next. So here's the question. When an experienced team has completed a route before, how much should past experience matter if the exit has not been inspected that day? Would you trust the old map? Would you approach the restriction to see for yourself? Or would the unverified exit be enough reason to turn the dive before entering the water? Tell me what you think in the comments, because in cave diving, the safest exit is not the one shown on the map. It is the one you have confirmed can still be used. Four divers could see daylight at the end of an underwater cave. But the exit was not safe. The passage had partially collapsed, forcing a powerful freshwater flow through a smaller opening. As the divers moved up the final slope, the current suddenly accelerated. One diver tried to hold on to the rocks. A specialist recovery team later needed approximately 3 hours to remove her. This was not a vacuum. It was moving water concentrated through a narrow restriction. Watch the full breakdown on Commander Puzzles.